Morning.
प्रेम से बोलिए श्री गजानन स्वामी की जय, श्री वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय, Sitaram, and a very special welcome as we join together this morning in Gita Jayanti celebrations here at the Shiv Shakti Mandir at Queen Anne Road. Let us all dedicate our thoughts to that most benevolent form of Jagat Pita Shri Krishna Bhagwan. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu. He is that embodiment of benevolence, of mercy and bliss. We seek his blessings as we celebrate the very auspicious occasion of Gita Jayanti. That directive and direction that he gave to Arjuna upon the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when Arjuna, Bhim, Nakul, Sahadev, Yudhishthir, the Pandavas faced the severest of threats upon themselves and their people, their kingdom. Just as he led them to victory by pointing them in the favorable, auspicious direction, steering them clear of all hurdles and dangers upon the battlefield of Kurukshetra, we pray similarly that his blessings will also guide us through the very tumultuous times, the very difficult and hazardous times that we too face upon this battlefield of life. Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. Arjuna fought the battle on the battlefield of Kurukshetra more than 5,000 years ago. You and I fight the battle of life, Dharma Kshetre, the very first slok of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Upon this battlefield of life, we too seek the blessings and guidance, the directive of Shri Krishna Bhagwan. He is Jagat Pita, he is also Jagat Guru. So that we too can become successful, my dear devotees, as we chart our way into the very perilous and difficult waters of this Bhavasagar. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Shri Saraswatyai Namaha, Shri Guru Charan Kamale Bhyo Namo Namaha. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvighanam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada. Veenadhare Vipulamangaladhanshile Bhaktarti Nashini Biranchi Harisha Vande Kirti Pradhe Akhila Manorathde Mahade Vidya Pradayini Saraswati Naumi Nityam. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaram, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Lakshmi Karotu Kalyanam, Arogyam Sukha Sampara, Mama Shatru Vinashaya Deepa Jyotir Namastute Nagindraharaya Trilochanaya Bhashmangaragaya Maheshwaraya नित्याय शुद्धाय दिगंबराय तस्मै नकाराय नमः शिवाय। मनुजवं मारुततुल्यवेगं जितेन्द्रियं बुद्धिमतां वरिष्ठं वातात्मजं वानरयूतमुख्यं श्रीरामदूतं शरणं प्रपद्ये। नीलाम्भुजं श्यामलकोमलाङ्गं सीतासमारूपतिभाग्यं पाणुमहासायक चारुचापं नमामि रामं रघुवंशनाथम्। ॐ श्रीकृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय श्रीगोविन्दाय नमो नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुलं गयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दं माधवम्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्ति शान्ति हरि ओम्। We pay our salutations to Shri Ganapati Bhagwan first and foremost. When we meditate upon that divine Lord Shri Ganesh Bhagwan, auspicious outcomes, favorable outcomes occur in our lives. Nisidin Namo Ganapati Charan. At the feet of Lord Ganesh, we pay our salutations and prostrations, our reverences over and over again. Nisidin Namo Ganapati Charan. Nisidin Namo Ganapati Charan. Ganapati Charan Jag Dukh Haran. Ganapati Charan Jag Dukh Haran. Nisidin Namo Ganapati Charan. Nisidin Namo Ganapati Charan. संताप सब मन के हारे मंगल सदा गणपति करे। संताप सब मन के हारे मंगल सदा गणपति करे। मन कर रहा प्रार्थना स्मरण। मन कर रहा प्रार्थना स्मरण। निस्दिन नमो गणपति चरण। निस्दिन नमो गणपति प्रेम से बोलिए श्री गजानन स्वामी की जय. Saraswati Mata, of course, is the goddess of knowledge and learning. We also invoke the blessings of Devi Saraswati in our devotions here this morning. Prem se boliye Shri Devi Saraswati Mata ki jai. Now today, devotees, apart from the celebration of Gita Jayanti, today is also Mokshada Ekadashi. Brahmanand Puran declares on the day of Mokshada Jayanti, the gateways or the doors of Vaikuntha Lok is opened, is left opened by Bhagavan Krishna. What does this mean? The name Mokshada Jayanti, Mokshada Ekadashi itself, my dear friends, gives us the clue or the answer. Moksha, everybody knows, means salvation. Salvation or escape from this bhausagar, this avagaman, this cycle of birth and death. Also on Mokshada Ekadashi, which we also celebrate on the day of Gita Jayanti, my dear friends, those who worship Bhagavan Krishna, as we are supposed to be doing throughout the year, but specifically so on the day of Mokshada Ekadashi, it yields great punya, great blessings are derived, my dear friends, more than normal on that day of Mokshada Ekadashi. As such, the devotee who consistently over the years would observe, of course we are supposed to be observing all the Ekadashis throughout the course of the year, but specifically so, my dear friends, when year after year we would observe the Mokshada Ekadashi, my dear friends, this yields tremendous benefit and blessings, and that punya accumulates, my dear friends. And so, as Brahmanand Puran declares, for that devotee who observes this Mokshada Ekadashi consistently during the course of his lifetime, then eventually, whenever our time would expire on this earthly planet, my dear friends, the doors of Vaikuntha Lok would indeed be opened to receive us. Krishna Murari ji, aakh base man bhave. O Krishna, it is your blessings that opens that eye of your devotee. Obviously the two eyes, the two physical eyes are always open, except for when we go to sleep for the night time. But here the bhajan is referring to that third eye of consciousness. Through your blessings, O Prabhu, activate that third eye, that eye of supreme bliss and consciousness, so that we become aware, O Prabhu, of our purpose and place and our relationship with you. So that these wonderful opportunities that you have given to us, O Prabhu, we would fully optimize and maximize, utilize the benefit and blessings of these wonderful observances. Mokshada Ekadashi, Gita Jayanti, even as we enter into the month of December, it's a time we know that many people look upon as a time of merriment and abandonment and so on. It is called a festive season by some, yet these observances, my dear friends, are there for us as a reminder, of our duties, our religious duties and responsibilities. Krishna Murari ji, aakh base man bhave. Krishna Murari ji, aakh base man bhave. Baki bihari ji, aakh base man bhave. Krishna Murari ji, aakh base man bhave. Kamalia सोचूं साम के सोचे रसिया जोगी कान बजावे मुरली बोल किए तक पहुँचे रास बिहारी जी आप बसे मन भावे शोभाधारी जी आप बसे मन भावे कृष्ण मुरारी जी आप बसे मन भावे तन मन प्राण हवाले तेरी कुछ मेरा रामारे पंछी माधव मदन गोवर्धन धारी दर्श में तेरी कृष्ण मुरारी आप बसे मन भावे सुध बुध धारी जी आप बसे मन भावे कृष्ण मुरारी जी आप बसे मन भावे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे। प्रेम से बोलिए श्री वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। Now before we actually get into our Gita, Dhyan and Gita chanting, of course, Gita Jayanti celebration centers around the chanting of the sacred shlokas of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Before we actually get into that aspect of our devotions, firstly let me pass you on to members of the group on stage here. Accompanying me this morning is my Dulhin, Shashikala Maharaj, my two sons, Pandit Vasudev and Pandit Vinayak Maharaj, and of course our most competent tabla player, Dudnathji. So we are very happy, my dear friends, to be here at the Mandal this morning in this wonderful celebration of Gita Jayanti. So first we'll have a couple of bhajans from the group on stage here, and then of course we'll get into the Gita, Dhyan and Gita shlokas from the pages of Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Jai Nandalala, Jai Gopala. Jai Nandalala, Jai Gopala. Shri Radhe Govinda, Hare Mujhe Hari Rama. Shri Radhe Govinda, Hare Mujhe Hari Rama. Gopala Hari Rama.
कृष्ण जिनका नाम है, गोकुल जिनका धाम है, ऐसे श्री भगवान को, ऐसे श्री भगवान को बारंबार प्रणाम है, बारंबार प्रणाम। कृष्ण जिनका नाम है, गोकुल जिनका धाम है, ऐसे श्री भगवान को, ऐसे श्री भगवान को बारंबार प्रणाम है, बारंबार प्रणाम है। यशोदा जिनकी नैया है, नंद जी बाबैया है, यशोदा जिनकी नैया है, नंद जी बाबैया है, ऐसे श्री गोपाल को, ऐसे श्री गोपाल को बारंबार प्रणाम है, बारंबार लूट लूट दही मागन गायो, द्वार बार संग दीन चरायो, लूट लूट दही मागन गायो, द्वार बार संग दीन चरायो, ऐसे लीला राम को, ऐसे लीला राम को बारंबार प्रणाम है, बारंबार प्रणाम है। द्रुपद सुत को लाज बचायो, रास गज को पंच चरायो, द्रुपद सुत को लाज बचायो, रास गज को पंच चरायो, ऐसे कृपा नाम को, ऐसे कृपा नाम को बारंबार प्रणाम है, बारंबार प्रणाम है। कृष्ण जिनका नाम है, गोकुल जिनका धाम है, ऐसे श्री भगवान को, ऐसे श्री भगवान को बारंबार प्रणाम है, बारंबार प्रणाम है, बारंबार। कान्हा कन्हैया नंद लाला हो, कान्हा
be exact, my dear friends, 5,158 years ago, the Mahabharata war was fought. And in response to Arjuna's lack of confidence, lack of motivation, for as you know, as that battle was about to begin, between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, that powerful Gandiva bow had slipped from the grasp of Arjuna. He knelt at the side of the chariot. Remember, Lord Krishna was his charioteer? He knelt at the side of the chariot and he said to Bhagwan Krishna, Prabhu, I do not have the will, the motivation to fight this battle. And Bhagwan Krishna had expounded at that point in time to Arjuna Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which we are reading today, my dear friends, and which is printed in all the world's major languages, people of all walks of life, not just Hindus. Read Srimad Bhagavad Gita and is inspired by Srimad Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna himself was inspired by Lord Krishna's rendition of Gita shlokas, my dear friends. In fact, he was inspired to such an extent that he became motivated. He picked up that Gandiva bow, that powerful weapon, my dear friends. And as Bhagwan Krishna had instructed him, Arjuna, one must never shirk or shun one's dharma, one's duty and one's discipline. Accept and embrace who you are. Understand what your responsibilities are. And without failure, O Arjuna, one must discharge these responsibilities. And it is these words, among many others, that Lord Krishna had spoken to Arjuna, my dear friends, that had motivated Arjuna in this manner. And this is what, my dear friends, we also use to inspire and to motivate us as well. You know, as we cross this Bhavasagar, as we face the many challenges and hurdles and so on, in our daily lives, you know, especially with the surging pandemic numbers that we face with and the multiple deaths and so on of so many of our beloved ones, my dear friends, that we're faced with, you know, it is this more than ever that we need, my dear friends, to protect us, to safeguard us, to motivate us, and also to point us in that direction, my dear friends, that Bhagwan Krishna had pointed Arjuna to attain that ultimate success, of course, that Arjuna and the Pandavas attained in that battle that they fought against the Kauravas. Now we're going to ask Pandit Vasudeva to do Gita Dhyan at this point in time, as we prepare ourselves to receive the shlokas of chapter 16 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, after which we will join in a discussion or a katha, you know, on what Bhagwan Krishna delivered in chapter 16. You see, apart from the recitation of the shlokas, we must also understand, my dear friends, the relevance of the information or the message or the lessons that Bhagwan wishes us to embrace at this time, at this point in our lives. All right, so over to Pandit Vasudeva. He will do Gita Dhyan for us, after which we'll have Pandit Vinayak chanting the shlokas of chapter 16 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Bolo Shri Vrindavan Garilal Ki Jaya. As we observe this day of Gita Jayanti, we understand that it was on this day, this divine song, as it were, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, was related to Arjuna by that form of Lord Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This Gita consists of 700 verses, and as Panditji said, we would be reading from chapter 16 today. But before having any reading from the Gita, we close our eyes, we clasp our hands together, we focus on that form of Sri Krishna. As we chant these shlokas of Dhyan, we ask for his continued guidance and blessing. Om Paritaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्ददामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमस्तुते व्यासविशालबुर्हे पुल्लार्विन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्ण प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमया प्रदीपा प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणे ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतं दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदगावो दोग्धागोपालनन्दन पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भुक्त दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचानूर्दमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं भीष्मद्रोणतथा जयद्रथाचला गान्धारानिलोत्पला शैलगृहाविते कृपेण वाहिनी कर्णेनाविलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरादयोधनावर्तिनी सुत्तीर्णकलुपाण्डवै रणनदी कैवर्तकाः केशवाः पार्विष्यार्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोर्गतं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाभूरितं लोके सजनशतपरहरः प्रीतियामानं मुदा भूयर्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमलप्रभंसिना श्रीयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुलङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दं माधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपरक्रम उपनिषदैर्गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थितर्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यन्तां न विदुसुरसुरगणा देवायै तस्मै नमः देवायै तस्मै नमः देवायै तस्मै नमः गीता गङ्गश्च गायत्री सीता सत्य सरस्वती ब्रह्मा विद्या ब्रह्मावली त्रिसन्ध्या मुक्तगेहिनी अर्धमात्रचिदानन्दा भवगनिभयनाशिनी वीरत्रिपरानन्त तद्वातज्ञानमञ्जलि इत्येतानि जपे नित्यं नरो निश्चलमानसः ज्ञानसिद्धिं लभीच्छीघ्रं तथान्ते परमं परम् ॐ नमो नारायणाय श्रीगोविन्दाय नमो नमः।
बोलिए श्री वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। Chapter 16 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna identifies in a very eloquent manner to Arjuna upon the battlefield of Kurukshetra the characteristics of the sant and the asant, those of saintly conduct and also those of demoniac conduct. That which he expects of us, my dear friends, of devotees, and of course that which he does not expect. In simple words, the do's and the don'ts, my dear friends, are clearly outlined by Bhagavan Krishna. In other words, he leaves no doubt in the mind of the devotee what conduct, what deportment, what behavior, what thoughts, what characteristics we should embody in order to attain his blessings. Alright, so over to Pandit Vinayak Maharaj now, who will chant chapter 16 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Gita Mahatyam.
अथ षोडशोऽध्यायः श्रीभगवानुवाच अभयं सत्त्वसंशुद्धे ज्ञानयोगव्यवस्थितिः दानं दमश्च यज्ञश्च स्वाध्यायस्तप आर्जवम् अहिंसा सत्यमक्रोधस्त्यागः शान्तरपैशुनं दया भूतेष्वलोलुप्त्वं मार्दवं हृदचापलं तेजः क्षमा धृति शौचम् अद्रोहो नातिमानिता भवन्ति सम्परं दैवीम् अभिजातस्य भारत दम्भो दर्पोऽभिमानश्च क्रोधः पारुष्यमेव च अज्ञानं चाभिजातस्य पार्थ सम्परमासुरीं दैवी सम्पद्विमोक्षाय निबन्धायासुरीमता माशु च सम्परं दैवीम् अभिजातोऽसि पाण्डव द्वौ भूतसर्गौ लोकेऽस्मिन् दैव आसुर एव च दैवो विष्टरश प्रोक्त आसुरं पार्थ मे शृणु प्रवृत्तिं च निवृत्तिं च जनान् विदुरासुरा न शौचं नापि चाचारो न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते असत्यम् अप्रतिष्ठं ते जगदाहुरनीश्वरम् अपरस्परसम्भूतं किमन्यत् कामहैतुकम् एतां दृष्टिमवष्टभ्य नष्टात्मानोऽल्पबुद्धया प्रभवन्त्युग्रकर्माणः क्षयाय जगतो हिताः काममाश्रित्य दुष्पूरं दम्भमानमदान्विताः मोहात् गृहीत्वा सर्ग्राहान् प्रवर्तन्ते शुचिव्रताः चिन्तामपरिमेयां च प्रलयान्तामुपाश्रिताः कामुपभोगपरमा एतावदिति निश्चिताः आशापाशाशतैर्बधा कामक्रोधपरायणाः ईहन्ते कामभोगार्थम् अन्यायेनार्थसंशयान् इदमद्य मया लब्धम् इमं प्राप्स्ये मनोरथम् इदमस्थिरमपि मे भविष्यति पुनर्धनम् असौ मया हतः शत्रुर्हनिष्ये चापरानपि ईश्वरोऽहम् अहं भोगी सिद्धोऽहं बलवान् सुखी आर्योऽभिजनवानस्मि पुण्योऽस्ति सदृशो मया यक्ष्ये दास्यामि मोदेश्य इत्यज्ञानविमोहिताः अनेकचित्तविभ्रान्त मोहजालसमावृताः प्रसक्ता कामभोगेषु पतन्ति नरकेषु च आत्मा सम्भाविता स्तब्धा धनमानमदान्विताः यजन्ते नाम यज्ञैस्ते दम्भेनाविधिपूर्वकम् अहङ्कारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं च संश्रिताः मामात्मपरदेहेषु प्रद्विषन्तोऽभ्यसूयकाः तानहं द्विषतः क्रूरान् संसारेषु नराधमान् क्षिपां यजस्रमशुभान् आसुरीष्वेव योनिषु आसुरीं योनिमापन्ना मूढा जन्मनि जन्मनि मामप्राप्यैव कौन्तेय ततो यान्त्यधमां गतिं त्रिविधं नरकस्येदं द्वारं नाशनमात्मनः कामः क्रोधस्तथा लोभस्तस्मादेतत्त्रयं त्यजेत् एतैर्विमुक्तः कौन्तेयः तमोद्वारैः श्रीभिर्नरः आचरत्यात्मनः श्रेयस्ततो याति परां गतिं यः शास्त्रविधिमुत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः न स सिद्धिमवाप्नोति न सुखं न परां गतिं तस्मात् शास्त्रं प्रमाणं ते कार्यकार्यव्यवस्थितौ ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं कर्म कर्तुमिहार्हसि ॐ तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे दैवासुरसम्पद्विभागयोगो नाम षोडशोऽध्यायः।
Shri Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki Jai. So having listened to the beautiful shlokas of chapter 16 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we'll ask Pandit Vinayak to also chant Gita Mahatyam, after which we will look at the very beautiful message, the wonderful message that Bhagavan Krishna delivers in chapter 16 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita.
Ata Gita Mahatmyam Gita Shastram idam punyam yapate prayata puman Vishnu paramavapnoti bhaya shokadi varjitaha Gita dhyayana shilasya pranayama parasya cha Naiva santi hi papani purva janma kritani cha Malanirmochanam punsam jalasnanam dine dine Sakrit Gitam bhasi snanam sansara malanashanam Gita sugita kartavya kimanyai shastra vistarai Yasvayam padmanabhasya mukha padman vinishrita Bharatamrita sarvasvam vishnur vakrar vinishritam Gita gangorakam pitva punarjanmana vidyate Sarvopanishado gao dogdha gopalanandana Pardo vatsa sudhir bhokta dogdham gitamritam mahat Ekam shastram devaki putra gitam Eko devo devaki putra eva Eko mantrastasya namani yani Karmapekam tasya devasya seva.
And of course, we're very happy to have the opportunity to listen to our two young Pandits this morning as well, chanting the beautiful Sanskrit shlokas of Gita, Dhyan, Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Gita Mahatyam. As we identified and mentioned earlier, my dear friends, chapter 16, Bhagavan Krishna outlines the characteristics of the good and the bad, the sant and the asant, the devotee and the demon. And so he begins with that of the devotee first and foremost, which we all strive to be, my dear friends. And obviously by implementing and practicing in our lives what we look at this morning, what Bhagavan Krishna had expounded to Arjuna, and which he expounds to us, my dear friends, every time these shlokas are chanted. By practicing these in our lives, we would be instituting, my dear friends, the very requirements that Bhagavan needs us to comply with in order, my dear friends, to enter into his heavenly abode in Vaikuntha and to secure that most elusive goal of moksha. And so in that first shloka, my dear friends, in chapter 16, he speaks of perfect purity of mind. We know of the purity of body. How do we attain the purity of the mind, my dear friends? Obviously, for the outside, for the physical cleansing of the body, we apply all the soap and shampoo, and of course in these times the sanitizers and so on, for the purity of the outer body. But what about the inner body? How do we attain that purity? What cleansing agent, my dear friends, is needed in order to achieve the inner purity? First of all, what are those things that makes us impure within? And that obviously, my dear friends, we would look at the lust and the greed and the anger and so on. All of these vices, my dear friends, need to be eradicated from our lives. And what do we apply? What do we implement? What do we utilize to get rid of these from our bodies, my dear friends? Right here, that bhakti, that devotion, my dear friends, every time we sit and chant the mantras of Bhagwan, every time we sit and listen to the katha of Bhagwan, some cleansing is taking place, something is occurring within us. Every time we sit and perform the havan, the pujan, my dear friends, all of these are the cleansing agents that we are utilizing, my dear friends, to eradicate all the impurities from within us. And secondly, he goes on to say, my dear friends, how we move from that state of devotion and purity and cleansing, my dear friends, to constant engagement in yoga. And of course, many of our people have become engaged in different types of yoga, different forms of yoga and so on. Bhakti yoga, Dhyan yoga, and of course we have the traditional yoga classes taking place, at our various mandirs and so on. All of that is of course for the physical and mental and spiritual upliftment of that individual. And Bhagavan Krishna himself, my dear friends, highly recommends, the engagement in yoga. And of course, whilst we go to the physical classes, yoga classes at the mandir and the various other venues where yoga take place, remember there is Dhyan yoga, there is Bhakti yoga, there is Karma yoga. So when he speaks of engagement in yoga, not just the physical yoga classes, but my dear friends, Dhyan yoga, that pathway to devotion, of how we accumulate the knowledge, my dear friends. Dhyan yoga is the accumulation of that knowledge. Right here, taken from the pages of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, taken from the pages of Ramcharitramanas, Bhagavad Puran, Shiv Puran and so on. So that pathway of Dhyan yoga is where we attain that knowledge, my dear friends, that is so very critical for us to attain the feet of Bhagavan Krishna. Bhakti yoga, of course, as we say, that pathway of devotion, where of course we strive through the performance of all our religious duties, the very celebration of this wonderful time of Gita Jayanti that we're speaking about. All of this encompasses the Bhakti Yoga, simply sitting in our home and chanting the mantras and performing our own personal devotion and so on, as so many people are doing. At this time of pandemic, not many people are leaving their homes to venture forth to the mandir and to the yagyas and so on. And so within the safety of our own homes, we can also practice that Bhakti Yoga. And of course, Karma Yoga, where through our karma, our actions, my dear friends, we also seek the pathway of Bhagwan, that pathway of devotion that leads us back to Bhagwan. Remember, दो रंग दुनिया के और दो रास्ते. There are two pathways, my dear friends. एक है ऐसे लोग वो जो औरों की खातिर जीते हैं, औरों की खातिर जीते हैं. दूसरे वो जो अपनी खातिर अपनों का खून ही पीते हैं, अपनों का खून ही पीते हैं. कोई फूल खिलाए, कोई कांटे बिखराए, दो रंग दुनिया के और दो रास्ते. Two pathways, one that leads us to Vaikuntha Lok and one that leads us to Narak. Which one do we choose, my dear friends? All of these different forms of yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, the physical yoga classes that you attend and perform and so on, my dear friends, all of these are very well intended and designed for us to take that pathway, my dear friends, the pathway of devotion, of bhakti, of dharma that leads us back to Bhagwan. So these are the first two of many, my dear friends, that Bhagavan Krishna speaks of. Purity of mind, engagement in yoga. And we can go on to speak of yoga in all its form for the entire morning session here. But of course, we want to look at all the various forms of devotion, of those characteristics that he outlines for us. Worship of Bhagwan in all his manifestations. So of course, if you look at the mandir here this morning, you're going to see all the various murtis which represents the manifestations of Bhagwan that he has taken over the passage of time. People often ask, why are there so many deities in Hinduism? In other religions, there's only one aspect of Godhead. In Hinduism, there are so many manifestations of Bhagwan. And a very interesting topic comes up for discussion, my dear friends. For we live in a plural society, obviously, what we call a multi-religious society. And many of our younger Hindus, when they venture forth in school and so on, when they're in their social contact with other friends and so on, and the various social forums, WhatsApp and what have you, Twitter and so on, what have you, Facebook and so on, these questions are posed to our younger Hindus of their friends who belong to other religious denominations. And it is a very valid question, it is a very valid concern, and here Bhagwan clearly states that one should engage in worship of God and all his various manifestations. So why is it in Hinduism we have so many manifestations? You look at the mandir here, so many murtis, and in other religious faith, my dear friends, there is just one aspect of Godhead. And perhaps the answer can be found, my dear friends, in tracing back the ages, the duration of existence of the various religions of this world. Some religions go back 2,000 years ago, some go back 3,000, 3,500 years ago. But how old is this universe? The archaeologists would tell you by scientific dating, they dig up the fossils and so on, they tell you these fossils can be as old as 60 million years. That is not a Hindu statement from a Hindu text. That is what, my dear friends, is given to us today by the scientists of today, and this, my dear friends, has been recorded and verified by many, many forums and many, many intellectuals and many, many universities across the world. It is without debate that this world is not just 2,000 years old or 3,000 years old, but in fact millions of years old. Sanatan Dharma, Hinduism, has been verified as the oldest known religion known to humankind. Not just by Hindus, but by the Guinness Book of World Records as the oldest known religion to humanity. So over the vast expanse of time that this world has been in existence, that one God has taken these many manifestations, my dear friends, over the passage of time. So in Hinduism, therefore, Bhagwan clearly states that the worship of Bhagwan with his many manifestations. It doesn't mean that there are many gods. The worship of Bhagwan, one Lord, with his many manifestations, should take place by his devotees. Also, one should pay reverence and respect to one's parents, one's elders, and one's guru. This we know, my dear friends, but of course we need to remind ourselves, because increasingly we are finding that these instances of respect and so on are disappearing in our homes. Unfortunately so, in many homes that respect has been lost between parent and children, and of course we see it by extension in the wider community where sometimes, our elders are being abused. So respect should be shown to elders, to parents, and to one's guru. Agnihotra, or the offering of Havan into the fire, the performance of Havan, study of the Vedas, the Puranas, the Shastras, the sacred scriptures, my dear friends, all of these are recommended by Bhagwan. On a daily basis, we say Vedyagya should take place. Vedyagya simply means the chanting, my dear friends, of even 1 line, 2 lines of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Ramcharitramanas, as the case may be. Chanting the names and praises of Bhagwan, in other words, chanting the mantras, chanting the bhajans, enduring hardship in the discharge of one's religious duties. What does this mean? Why should we endure hardship in the discharge of our religious duties. My dear friends, everything in this world comes with sacrifice. Sometimes, people are fasting and they say, Baba, the fasting is too difficult for me. I find it very hard. I find it very difficult to undergo the fasting. My dear friends, the fasting has your spiritual benefit as well as your physical health benefit. Now, all the doctors will tell you, the fasting and the vegetarian diet is very good for you. You become a healthier person, by engaging in the fasting and so on. So if we find that we have to undergo a little bit of hardship, a little bit of difficulty, my dear friends, in the discharge of our religious duties, we should not be reluctant to do so. The greater the sacrifice, the greater the blessing, my dear friends. The greater the sacrifice, the greater the reward. We know that. When you study hard, the children study hard in school, they achieve excellent results. When you work hard at your job, you are compensated for your hard work. Similarly, in the spiritual sphere of life, when we suffer or when we undergo hardship, a little bit of sacrifice, my dear friends, that comes with the fasting and so on. And if we have to leave our homes, the mandir is a little distance off, do not find it too difficult or too hard to go to the mandir, If you have to go to the yajna and the weather is slightly inclement or, rainy as the case may be, do not find it difficult to leave home because, there's a little bit of rain as the case may be. We cannot help but compare sometimes. And it is interesting to compare, for it gives people a better perspective of, what this hardship or what this sacrifice is all about. Some years ago, we were in New York performing yajna, and I think on the first night of that yajna, there was a terrible storm, and there were floods all over and so on. And we had devotees who were leaving New Jersey and driving from New Jersey to New York. And later in the year, we had the opportunity to attend a yajna at another mandir. And I remember on one occasion, there was snow on the ground, and devotees were leaving their homes in the cold, in the snow, to come out to the mandir and be part of the devotion. Here in Trinidad, we are not subjected to the extreme weather. Sometimes we are, yes, but still not as bad as, our friends and families overseas and so on. And we find that, my dear friends, sometimes even under very adverse circumstances, our friends and families brave those adverse, inclement weather and so on, and still take part in the devotion at the mandir and so on. And sometimes, my dear friends, when Bhagavan says here, in our katha this morning, that we must face that little hardship, that little sacrifice in the discharge of our duties, we must include all of these, my dear friends, and ensure that our presence, at the mandir is very important, the performance of our duties, notwithstanding, whatever difficulties we may endure. This is very important. And when we do so, my dear friends, this pleases Bhagavan very much. Recognizing such devotion under such adversity, my dear friends, He rewards even more such a devotee. है आँखों जो शाम का दर्शन किया करे, है शीश जो प्रभु चरण में बंधन किया करे. And indeed this bhajan is saying to us, just as we are discussing in this beautiful katha, है आँख वो जो शाम का दर्शन किया करे. The eyes are for getting darshan of the beautiful form of Bhagwan. So that when you come to the mandir, you feast your eyes upon the beautiful murtis, my dear friends. We fulfill this aspect of Bhagwan's divine mandate. है शीश जो प्रभु चरण के बंधन की आखरी. The head is for bowing to the feet of Bhagwan, to the feet of the Guru, to the feet of the Brahman. बेकार वो मुख है जो रहे व्यर्थ बातों में, मुख वो है जो हरि नाम का सुमिरन किया करे. The voice is for chanting the bhajans and mantras and so on. खीरे मोती से नहीं शोभा है हाथ की, है हाथ जो भगवान की पूजन किया करे. The hands, my dear friends, are for performing pujan, for helping others, not hurting others. मर कर भी अमर नाम है इस जीव का जग में, प्रभु प्रेम से बलिदान दो जीवन किया करे. Understand these God-given gifts that Bhagavan has given to us. And you know, sometimes we take it for granted, my dear friends. You know, there are those who are born blind. There are those who lose their sight, who become blind whilst, alive. There are those who cannot hear. There are those who cannot walk. There are those who do not have hands. These are gifts that Bhagavan has given to us, as he outlines in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, to use, to utilize in these divine acts and divine purposes. है आँख वो जो शाम का दर्शन किया करे, है शीश जो प्रभु चरण में बंधन किया करे. बेकार वो मुख है जो रहे व्यर्थ बातों में, बेकार वो मुख है जो रहे व्यर्थ बातों में. मुख वो है जो हरि नाम का सुमिरन किया करे. हीरे मोती से नहीं शोभा है हाथ की, है हाथ जो भगवान का पूजन किया करे. मर कर भी अमर नाम है इस जीव का जग में, प्रभु प्रेम से बलिदान दो जीवन किया करे. Mira Bihari Lal Ki Jai. He goes on to speak of non-violence in thought, word and deed. How can you be violent to someone in thought? How can you be violent to someone by word or by speaking? We know by deed, by action, certainly we can be violent to someone. My dear friends, sometimes the negativity of our thoughts makes the entire atmosphere, whether you may be at the workplace, at the home, at the mandir, wherever you are. You see, sometimes someone may be quiet, they may be silent, but you know there are negative thoughts in mind. My dear friends, this type of negativity pervades the entire atmosphere. Even the words we speak sometimes can be very damaging. The tone, the choice of words, the volume with which we speak, my dear friends, when spoken in a particular manner, conveys certain negativity towards that person who is at the receiving end of those words, my dear friends. They may be very hurt, very humiliated, very embarrassed due to the words that we speak. So he speaks of ahimsa, non-violence, in thought, word and deed. This is very important in the home, my dear friends. You know, very often, I will tell you as Pundits, we are called into certain counseling sessions, you know. Baba is asked to be a mediator, a counselor. Sometimes, you know, you have a little kuchu, a little quarrel, a little upheaval in the home. And very often it is found, my dear friends, that what is at the basis of many of the disturbances in many of our homes is that the way we speak to each other is not good at all. This, my dear friends, becomes the fire that ignites the entire situation and sometimes erupts into violence and so on in the home. So remember, non-violence in thought, word and deed. Human nature is like this, you know. If I shout at you, if I speak harshly to you, chances are you're going to respond in the same way and begin to shout at me as well. And if I speak in a soft manner, in a gentle manner, nice words, my dear friends, then the other person is supposed to return that dialogue in also a gentle way and a manner that does not lead, my dear friends, to an escalation, you know, of arguments and confrontation and so on. Truthfulness, Satyam, of course, we know Satyam is one of the pillars of Sanatana Dharma. Satyam, Saucham, Daya or Dhyan. So he speaks of truthfulness. We must be truthful in all that we do. Maintain the words that we speak. Of course, very popular from Ramcharitamanas, Raja Dashratha declared, Raghukula Riti Sarachalyayi Pran Najayi Parvachan Najayi. I prefer to die than for my words to become false. And we live by this creed, my dear friends. We speak truth at all times. We maintain Satyam in all our interactions with our people, our colleagues and families and friends and so on. Absence of anger, very important, you know. But Bhagavan Krishna goes one step further to say absence of anger even upon provocation. So obviously it's one thing to control our anger in normal times when there is no provocation. But Bhagavan says to us, even if we are provoked by someone, we should remain restrained, my dear friends. We should restrain that anger and of course remain cool and calm and collected. Of course, we know that's easier said than done. But we must ask ourselves the question, who controls you as an individual? Are you in control of yourself, or is the other person in control of you? For Bhagavan says, if you are really in control of yourself, that person can sing, he can dance, he can argue, he can curse, whatever he does. That should have no effect or impact upon you, for you are in control of your emotions. So you must think about it, my dear friends. Because you know, sometimes it may sound comical, it may sound jokey, as we say, But sometimes you hear people say, Baba, whenever I see this person, my blood does begin to boil. What does that indicate, my dear friends? Whenever this person speaks, I become very angry. What does this really mean? What does it say about ourselves? Are we really in control of who we are? Are we in control of our emotions? Or are we so weak, my dear friends, that simply that person's presence or that person's voice or that person's words would incite us and cause us to lose control of ourselves? So remember, chapter 16, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna says, control your anger even upon provocation. Krodha na chora, jhoot na chora. And in this beautiful bhajan, these exact words that Bhagavan Krishna is outlining in chapter 16 is captured in this beautiful bhajan. So it says, Krodha na chora, destroy krodha, all anger. Jhoot na chora, destroy all falsehood. Do not speak lies. Satya vachana kyo chora diya. Of course, always speak satya, truthfulness. Be honest at all times. Nam japana kyo chora diya. Always engage in chanting Bhagwan's divine name. Krodha na chora, jhoot na chora, satya vachana kyo chora diya. मानस एक भगवान भरोसो तन मन धन चुना छोड़ दिया नाम जपन क्यों छोड़ दिया क्रोध न छोड़ा झूठ न छोड़ा सच वचन क्यों छोड़ दिया नाम जपन क्यों छोड़ दिया सच वचन क्यों छोड़ दिया नाम जपन क्यों छोड़ दिया। प्रेम से बोलिए श्री वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। He goes on, my dear friends, to outline these characteristics and tendencies of the devotee, which we all strive to be, we all strive to practice these in our lives. When we do so, my dear friends, we ensure that as Brahmanan Puran declares, the doors of Vaikuntha Loka are open to that devotee who upholds and practices this wonderful day of Mokshada, Ekadashi, this wonderful day of Gita Jayanti. These are the requirements, my dear friends. You know, when you're traveling at this time in the pandemic, there are requirements to travel. You have to get the vaccine card and all the PCR tests and antigen tests and so on to travel. If you have all the requirements, certainly you can travel. If you don't, then of course you are not allowed to travel. These are the requirements for us to travel to where? Vaikuntha Loka. So, remove violence from your mind in thought, word and deed. Remove anger, even upon provocation. Speak the truth. Be honest at all times with all with whom you come into contact with. Composure of mind. Always be composed. You know, when Sri Ram, when his kingdom was taken away from him, it was promised to him by his father Raja Dashrath, and he was told instead, listen, you wouldn't become the king anymore. You need to go to the forest for 14 years. You know, what was his reaction? There was perfect composure of mind. In today's world, somebody would get very angry and very upset. And, you know, there would be a confrontation, there would be a showdown, and so on, you know, with that person whom has taken away his promise that was made to that individual. Sri Ram simply says, if this is what is expected of me at this point in time by my father, then I will willingly accept. And he left, my dear friends, without any animosity towards Kekri, towards Bharat, or towards his father. Composure of mind. Abstain and refrain from malicious gossip and blasphemy. In other words, ill-speaking others and bad-talking others and pulling down others and so on. My dear friends, Bhagavan says we must stay very far away from such activities and so on. And you know, my dear friends, this is one of the things that is tearing down our society. And now, of course, traditionally, long time ago, it used to be just in the village, between neighbors' homes and so on. And now, of course, it has spread, my dear friends, to social media. So in other words, it has been multiplied thousandfold. You know, the extent to which some of our people would engage in the malicious gossip and, you know, tearing down of others and so on. So you must be very mindful of the damage this causes, my dear friends, all around us. Compassion and mercy to all creatures. Daya means mercy. We spoke of Satyam, Saucham, Daya or Dan, the pillars of Sanatan Dharma. And here Bhagavan says, mercy is not just for your fellow human being, but he says towards all creatures. Bhagavan says, you know, in Ramcharitamanas, a very popular chaupai, Siya Ram main sab jag jani, karau pranam jori jug pani. Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Jai Rama. Shri Ram, Jai Rama, Jai Jai Rama. With folded hands, Tulsidashi says, I bow to all of God's creation, not just to human beings. For I see that same spark of divinity within me, present in each and every one. Ishvara Sarva Bhutana. We recognize this, we understand this, we know this. So Bhagavan says, compassion to all creatures. The dog, do not abuse, do not beat, do not mistreat. It's one of the most commonly mistreated and abused animals, my dear friends. All animals, the cow we look upon as a mother, Gau Mata, so we do not take the life of the cow, we do not partake of the flesh of the cow. So compassion towards all creatures, non-violence towards all creatures, mercy towards all creatures. Bhut Yagya is one of the yagyas that is supposed to be performed by Hindus on a daily basis, where you care for the animals. Simply giving the animals the food and the water and so on, my dear friends, is discharging that aspect of our devotion. He goes on to speak of absence of attachment to the sensual objects around us. There are many things that attract our senses, my dear friends. We try to refrain from this attachment and of course become attached to the feet of Bhagwan instead. That attachment in devotion, my dear friends, would yield greater results. Hanumanji, of course, was a great embodiment of that, the detachment from those sensual objects around him, even the beautiful necklace that was given to him by Sita Devi. Upon their return to Ayodhya from 14 years of exile, he broke it apart, he looked into it, he bit the beads, the gems, and someone asked, what are you looking for? This is a very valuable necklace that you are destroying, O Pavanput. He says, this has no value to me if it does not have a Ram and Sita in it. And he was asked, do you have a Ram and Sita in you? Do you have God in you? Certainly yes. Chira Kechati say, opening his chest, revealed that image of a Ram and Sita within him. So, detachment, my dear friends, from these sensual objects, and instead attachment to the feet of Bhagwan. And a sense of shame, last but not least, in the list of characteristics of the son. He says a sense of shame. That individual would feel a sense of shame and embarrassment, personal shame and embarrassment, when he transgresses against the scriptural injunctions. And that Hindu knows the do's and the don'ts. He knows that, I'm supposed to be fasting, I'm supposed to be performing the pujan, I'm supposed to be adhering to certain principles of dharma. And when he transgresses, he knows so. And that individual would feel that personal sense of shame and embarrassment, because he knows, I have transgressed, I have trodden upon Bhagavan's dharmic injunctions. These, my dear friends, are the marks, the characteristics, the expectations that Bhagavan has of us, of the devotee, and how we are supposed to abide and uphold and cultivate in our lives these wonderful virtues of dharma. So we're going on quickly now to those marks of the asant or the demoniac individuals. That individual would practice hypocrisy, arrogance, pride, anger, ignorance. And of course, all of these are very damaging, debilitating practices, my dear friends, to have in our lives. And we see many of these, obviously, all around us in today's society, the hypocrisy, the arrogance, the pride, the anger, ignorance, my dear friends. This pervades so many aspects of our society today, and these are the things, some of the things, my dear friends, that are very damaging to our people and to our society. Unfortunately, my dear friends, not many people, many of our people are not paying heed to what Bhagavan says. And he says, when we inculcate these in our lives, this type of anger and hypocrisy and so on, we are stepping further and further away from the path of dharma. We are getting onto the path of adharma, which leads us into narak and into further suffering. That individual cherishes insatiable desires. We speak of aur Krishna. Today one desire is fulfilled, tomorrow you have 10 more. And so that desire spiral, we get caught up into that desire spiral, my dear friends. And just as a tornado spins out of control, so too, our Krishna, that desire spiral spins out of control, and it causes us to embrace false doctrines, ignoring and abandoning, my dear friends. And we see it happening, obviously. The words of Bhagavan Krishna are so true. We see it happening amongst our people. Embracing false doctrines, they ignore and abandon, my dear friends, that which they are born into, and embrace false doctrines. Because, my dear friends, we choose to abandon the teachings of Bhagavan. These individuals are of impure conduct and move into this world, my dear friends, shedding and sharing this impurity with all of whom they come into contact with. Clinging to this false view, these slow-witted individuals display this vile disposition. In other words, whenever you meet them, you see a very vile outlook, a very vile behavior, a very rude communication and appearance is always seen when you meet with these individuals. Bhagavan Krishna declared, these are the very enemies of humanity. These individuals become the enemies of humanity because by their continuous conduct and flagrant disregard, my dear friends, for the scriptural injunctions, they continue to destroy, the norms of society, the values of society, the values of the home. They destroy the values within their own home first. And then they spread, my dear friends, just as the pandemic spreads, and all whom it comes into contact with, if it does not destroy 100%, it destroys, my dear friends, partially. So too, after destroying the norms and values and goodness within their own homes, they spread to all those with whom they would come into contact with. And this is why, it is emphasized in Nauda Bhakti Katha, Ramcharitramanas, when Sri Ram spoke to Shivari. Prathama Bhakti Santana Kar Sangha. First form of devotion, always engage in good company, always seek good company, always engage in satsang. The thoughts and the conversations you would encounter in satsang, of course, would be uplifting as compared to what we are reading in Katha here this morning. When you come into contact with those of vile disposition, they damage, my dear friends, they destroy all the values of goodness and decency and honesty and so on. Such individuals possessing demoniac disposition say that this world is without God, that God is unreal. They do not believe, my dear friends, in Bhagavan's divinity. And as such, my dear friends, they disclaim all that is associated with Bhagavan himself. Such individuals, Bhagavan Krishna warns his devotee to stay very far from, and of course, to avoid contact with such individuals at all cost. My dear friends, this katha with Bhagavan enumerating these various qualities and characteristics and marks of those of saintly conduct and those of demoniac conduct is very important, very relevant, with us in today's society, so that we too can possess that capability of ascertaining, being able to separate. Just as the lotus flower separates that which is pure and impure in the pond. The bottom of the pond where the lotus grows has lots of impurities, the mud and the murk and so on, the leech and all those impurities reside within the pond. But when you look at the lotus flower above the surface of the water, it is of course an embodiment of purity, untainted by the mud and sun within which it grows. So too we live in a society, Bhagavan says to us, that also possesses many of these impure traits and tendencies and behavior. And that devotee similarly would develop, my dear friends, that capability of separating, just as the lotus separates that which is pure and impure, just as the hans, that bird that when it drinks milk would extract only the cream and leave behind the water. So too we become like the lotus, we become like the hans, my dear friends, embracing that which is good and pure and divine, and leaving behind that which is impure. And so we glorify Krishna Bhagavan in this bhajan. He is Basuriwala, he who played upon the beautiful Basuri, that melodious music that enchanted the hearts and the minds of the people of Vrindavan, of Gokula, of Mathura. And just as he shared these wonderful shlokas with Arjuna, my dear friends, more than 5,000 years ago, upon the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he continues to share this with us, even in today's world. वो काला एक बांसुरी वाला, बांसुरी वाला, बांसुरी वाला, वो काला एक बांसुरी वाला, वो काला एक बांसुरी वाला, सुन बिसरा गया होरी रे, सुन बिसरा गया होरी, माखन छोड़ जो नंद किशोर हो, माखन छोड़ जो नंद किशोर हो, कर गयो रे, कर गयो मन की छोरी रे, सुध बिसरा गया मोरी, वो काला एक बांसुरी वाला। छोड़ी रे Shri Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki Jai. And dear friends, we will stop our katha at this stage. Now, we have Sapta Shloki, 7 shlokas, which is said to encapsulate the essence of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Obviously, within 2 hours, we cannot chant all the shlokas of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So we have done the entirety of chapter 16. And of course, Sapta Shloki, my dear friends, is one of the best ways of encapsulating all of the essence of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So, we're going to ask Pandit Vinayak Maharaj to chant Sapta Shloki for us at this point in time.
Ata Sapta Shloki Gita Om Ityakaksharam Brahma Vyaharan Manusmaran Yaprayati Ityajandeham Sayati Paramam Gatim Stane Hrishikesha Tava Prakirtiya Jagat Prahrishyat Yanurajyate Cha Rakshansi Bhitani Dishodravanti Sarve Namasyanti Cha Siddha Sangha Sarvatah Panipadam Tad Sarvatokshi Shiromukham Sarvatah Shruti Malloke Sarvamavritya Tishtati Kavim Purana Manushasitaram Anuraniyam Samanusmaredya Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varanam Tamasaha Parastat Urdhvamulam adhashakham Ashvatam prahuravyayam Chandamsi yasya parnani Yastam vera savera vita Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto Matasmritir jnanam apohanam cha Vedaisya sarvairahameva vedyo Verantakrit veda videva chaham Manmana bhava mad bhakto Madhyaji mam namaskuru Mame vaishyasi yuktvevam Atmanam mad parayanaha.
Boliye Shri Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki Jai. Gita Mahatam tells us of the greatness of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. It tells us of Susharma, who was of course born in human form, but due to misdeed and misconduct, lost the human form and was born into that of a donkey, a gadaha. He suffered tremendously in that form of the donkey, of that animal. He was beaten and treated in a very cruel manner. In his dying moments, in the form of that animal, a great sage happened to pass by, who was blessed with Trikaldarshi, the ability to see the past, the present, and the future. And he saw that this donkey was actually, a human being in his Purva Janam. And at the dying moments of that donkey, he chanted Gita shlokas. And by virtue of listening to this, my dear friends, in his dying moments, that donkey was reborn in the home of a king. And he retained that vision, my dear friends, of whom he was in his Purva Janam. And so, my dear friends, he embraced the greatness. He embraced the greatness of the teachings of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. This is what you and I have at our disposal, in our hands, my dear friends. And the only way we can achieve the benefits, my dear friends, is by actually listening to the chanting of those sacred shlokas, and of course, as we have done, by understanding, most of all, the message that those shlokas bring to us. So as we celebrate Gita Jayanti this year, We close our presentation this morning and we pray that Bhagwan's blessings would enter into your homes, into that of your families, into your hearts. We pray that Bhagwan would continue to safeguard us and protect us against the dangers of this pandemic and the many dangers that surround us. May Bhagwan continue to bless us so that we remain firmly rooted on that pathway of bhakti, of devotion. May you, Lord, continue to place your protective hands upon us, continue to safeguard us and protect us against all dangers and difficulties. Mantrahinam kriyahinam bhaktihinam janadhanam yat pujitam maya devam paripurnam tadastu me. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. प्रेम से बोले श्री गजानंद स्वामी की जय, उमापति महादेव की जय, पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, श्री वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय, उड़ैसा जगन्नाथ की जय, बोलो भाई सब संतन की जय, श्री सत्य सनातन धर्म की जय, जय जय सीताराम।
Sankhya Television is not only the first Hindu TV station in Trinidad and Tobago, but Sankhya TV also has the most coverage. You can find Sankhya Television on YouTube by searching for Sankhya Television. On the Sankhya Television's YouTube channel, you can find all previously recorded yagnas and all Sankhya TV exclusive programming. Don't forget to click subscribe so you can be notified of all new uploads. Sankhya Television aims at providing you with your #1 choice for cultural, inspirational, and spiritual programming.
Good day, my name is Omkar, inviting you to join me every Thursday afternoon from 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. for my program Diksha. On Diksha, we take a look at the universal principles and relate them to our everyday life so that we may live happy and healthy lifestyles. So once again, every Thursday from 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here on Sankhya Television. Today on Diksha, we look at the types of prayers that people have